In this quiet night, as you prepare to close your eyes, we'll take you to a place ungoverned by laws and where justice finds no harbor, a place on the high seas where ships sway like bad dreams. No walls protect you, and no window offers a view of hope. This isn't an adventure, nor a fictional tale about hidden treasure, but a real life lived by men under a black flag and a fear that never sleeps. Tonight, we'll immerse ourselves in just one day, a day aboard a pirate ship, a day where you start as a human and end as something unrecognizable. Think for a moment, could you endure living just one day with pirates? Don't expect cheerful songs, fancy hats, or a dancing monkey on a shoulder. Lie down. Dim the lights. Now, let the sound of the sea seep into your mind. Let's begin the journey. You wake up, but not on a soft bed or in a room with familiar features, but on a damp wooden plank overhead with dangling ropes, surrounded by an indefinable smell, a mixture of salt, sweat, and cheap rum. You open your eyes and find darkness all around, not night, but a dim corner inside a wooden ship that sways as if it's dying. No windows, no ventilation, no privacy. You're not living in a room, but in a cavity between a barrel of gunpowder and a rusty chain. You try to get up, but your back groans from the rough wood, and your knee clicks, as if warning you against trying to move. Screaming is the first thing you hear. No one wakes up here quietly. The sound is sharp, full of anger, as if everyone on the ship woke up to remind you that you are an intruder and that this place is not yours. You reach your hand to your side, finding nothing but a tattered shoe, if you're lucky. Otherwise, you walk barefoot on a deck full of splinters and dark patches of dried blood that no one asks about or denies. Breakfast is a piece of hard biscuit called hardtack that fights your teeth, as if refusing to enter your mouth. Inside it, you find small worms confidently moving, as if they were there before you. You swallow it with a gulp of rum, not drunk for pleasure, but to numb your stomach before the daily torture begins. You raise your head and find the sun scorching your skin without mercy, and the air so humid it's as if you're breathing through a wet cloth. No one smiles. No one welcomes you. The captain shouts, his voice rising above the sound of the waves. There's no time for rest, no time for thought. There are ropes to be pulled, cannons to be cleaned, and orders to be executed without discussion. And so, in the first hour of this day, you realize you are not a guest, but a slave under scrutiny. Everything around you, the sea, the ship, the men, tests your ability to survive or to collapse. In the pirate world, nothing shows mercy. Your stomach gets no time for a cook, and no resources for luxury. What's served on the ship isn't a meal, but a daily challenge to survive. You squat on a deck covered in dark stains, waiting your turn in front of a kettle boiling with an unclear mixture called a stew, but no one knows what's inside it. Remnants of meat that resemble neither animal nor fish, and some floating carrots, rare find, if the cook was lucky. The cook is a one-eyed man with hands stained with soot. His only cooking skill is the ability to maintain continuous boiling. He isn't a chef, but a former prisoner exempted from fighting because he lost half a foot. The bread served isn't fresh, it's a box of hard loaves reeking of mold. You bring it close to your mouth and discover something moving, small worms confidently inhabiting it. But no one complains, for the rule here is simple: if you don't eat, you won't be able to stand on your feet when the captain calls you. As for the water, its salinity is closer to the sea than to a river. And if there is something to drink, it's rum, dispensed in tiny quantities, not to quench thirst, but to numb hearts and silence regret. No one gathers around the food, no one laughs while eating, no one exchanges stories. Eating here is akin to a punishment, a meal you wrestle with your teeth, fearing it might later return as cramps that finish you off in a dark corner unnoticed. This is how you eat if you are a pirate: no taste, no warmth, no salt to satisfy the palate, just mouthfuls to keep you going, nothing more. When the light fades, the night doesn't announce rest, but a different kind of chaos. Sleeping on a pirate ship isn't rest, but a temporary moment of surrender in a place that knows no tranquility. There are no beds here, no comfortable mattresses, no clean-smelling pillows. It's just a wooden patch you share with rats and vermin, and sometimes with a pirate who's been bleeding all day. The air is stifling, the wood is damp, and the cockroaches know their way to your bedding better than you do. You stretch out and try to ignore the continuous creaking, the sound of the rope swaying, and the pervasive odor that settles in your nose and never leaves. You close your eyes and hear violent snoring next to you, then a sound like a gasp. Is that a man dying or someone crying silently? It doesn't matter, for all sounds are alike when you sleep in the darkness, amidst fear and the sea. Even if sleep overcomes you, safety is absent. You might be woken by a shout, a bucket of water, or a slap from a shipmate in a fit of madness. Or worse, a kick from the captain himself because he didn't like how you looked while sleeping. Thus, sleep becomes an adventure, an unpredictable experience. You might wake up, or you might never wake up. Aboard a pirate ship, there are no friends in the sense you know. Everyone around you is either a temporary ally or a sleeping adversary. Salt water doesn't bind hearts, but fills them with suspicion. They talk, they laugh, they exchange stories, but no one trusts the other. Your back is never turned, and silence is sometimes more precious than gold. Even laughter sometimes seems like a trap set for you to reveal your secrets, to be used against you later. You quickly learn that your words must be measured, that every movement is monitored, and that every action has a price, and if payment is delayed, the law is enforced. The law is set by the captain or by agreement among the crew during a collective night of drinking, but its application is selective. Today you're punished for theft, and tomorrow someone who stole more than you is praised. Conflicts ignite quickly: a long stare, an accidental touch, a word that slipped from your mouth unintentionally, all can be the spark for a knife fight or a brawl on a wet deck. Yet, amid this chaos, there is a fragile balance. They all seem to know they have only each other, and that the sea, despite its savagery, is less treacherous than a comrade who turns on you in the dark. That is the crew's law: no love, no loyalty, only brittle alliances that keep you alive for one more day. When you're on a ship that doesn't recognize law, justice becomes something else, something invented according to mood, anger, and sometimes for unstated reasons. There were no courts, no right to defense. All it took was the captain to point his finger or for someone to shout. He did it, and from that moment, the spectacle began. One of the most famous punishments is walking the plank, where you are forced to walk to the end of a sloping wooden plank extending from the ship towards the open sea, below which lie merciless depths and sharks that might be the last thing you see. It's said to be a romantic way to die, but in reality, it's rare. Pirates prefer more humiliating methods, such as tying the offender to the mast and leaving him for hours under the sun. His back bare and salt inflaming his old wounds, or submerging him headfirst in a barrel of rotten water while the others laugh. One of the crueler punishments was known as flogging until silent, where a man was beaten until he stopped making any sound, either because he lost consciousness or because he died. If you stole from the crew, your ear might be cut off, or your face branded with hot iron so that the mark of betrayal remains a silent witness on your face. But the strangest thing is that these punishments weren't always executed due to crimes. Sometimes they were used just to assert power or to alleviate the ship's boredom. Punishment isn't a means of reform, but a tool for dominance. So, when someone errs, they don't ask, "What is the punishment?" but rather, "How much will I endure before I break?" When you think of pirates, you imagine gold, treasures, and chests overflowing with shiny coins. But the reality is much less glamorous. Loot exists, yes, but it is rare and inconsistent, and often comes at an unbearable price. One ship might carry a fortune, and another holds only ropes, salted fish, and hardtack. The difference between the two is a bloody battle that knows no mercy. When a merchant ship is attacked, the entire crew turns into beasts. Those who resist are killed, and the rest are dragged barefoot onto a blood-stained deck. Then the inventory process begins. Chests are opened, barrels are smashed, searching for anything that can be sold, drunk, or worn. But the surprise comes later, when everything is divided according to the Articles of Agreement, prize law. You discover your share is meager. The captain takes the largest portion, then the officers, and then you are tossed a few coins, enough to buy a bottle of rum or a new knife. As for glory, it doesn't exist. As soon as the battle ends, everything returns to normal. No one remembers who fought bravely or who bled silently, for everyone is merely a tool in the eyes of the sea. That image we see in stories, the pirate who fills his pockets with gold and lives on a tropical island, is rare, if not a myth. Because the true gain isn't gold, but the chance to live one more day, to dodge a bullet or a betrayal or a sudden disease that flares up in your body. Thus, in the pirate world, treasure isn't measured by what you own, but by what you survive. On the sea, no sound rises above the waves except the sound of betrayal when the silence breaks. Betrayal among pirates isn't an exception, but a constant probability. From the moment you step aboard the ship, the game of survival begins, and everyone watches everyone else. Your mate might smile at you and share food, then report you secretly at night, or steal a coin from your chest and swear he never went near it. But how do you discover betrayal? There are no informants or devices, but noses that smell fear and eyes accustomed to reading trembling faces. It starts with suspicion, a look longer than usual, a whisper in a corner, or a hand movement concealing something. Then comes the test phase. The suspect is left in a sensitive situation, watched, lured. If they stumble and lie, the game is exposed. Betrayal is unforgivable in this world. Even suspicion is enough to turn the ship into a violent arena. Woe to the one caught red-handed, dragged by the feet, tied to the mast, or thrown into the sea alive. But the worst is when the betrayal comes from the captain himself. Then the tables turn, mutinies are declared, and knives are raised instead of sails. Everything is determined by one rule: who preempts the other with betrayal or death. And so, in the pirate world, the enemy isn't just those on other ships, but sometimes the one who sleeps beside you and smiles at you before plunging a dagger into your back. For centuries, the image of the old map with a red X mark has captivated imaginations, a wooden chest buried under a palm tree, full of gold and jewels, and a faded paper guiding you to it. But did pirates really bury their treasures? The reality is rarely, if ever. Pirates weren't long-term planners. They lived day by day, spending their spoils on drink, women, and pleasures, and leaving port before the governor or soldiers remembered them. Why would a man bury his money if he wasn't guaranteed to live until tomorrow? And why would he hide it if he had to divide it among his crew, or else face mutiny? The buried treasure, as we know it, was born from stories and the imagination of writers, especially after the publication of the novel, Treasure Island, in the 19th century, which ignited the imagination of generations and cemented the idea in collective memory. Some sunken treasures were found in ships, but they weren't hidden intentionally. They were swallowed by the sea in battles or storms. As for a pirate going to an island, digging a hole, placing a chest, then drawing and burying a map, that is more like children's stories than the life of rebels. Yet, the legend remains alive, perhaps because it gives hope that something awaits, or because it represents what man always seeks, adventure and loot, even if it is an illusion. But if buried treasure is merely a myth, there are real faces that walked those wooden planks and raised the black flag, Jolly Roger, in broad daylight, turning the seas into a stage for chaos, glory, and blood. Faces that didn't hide treasures under the sands, but hid their names in the heart of the waves. We draw closer to them to listen to the echo they left behind in the waters of the Caribbean. In those warm waters, where islands are scattered like pearls and the wind whispers sleepless secrets, the most insane tales in pirate history were born. The sea that refused to be ruled from a throne left itself to chaos, to be ruled by those who possessed the audacity or who excelled at inciting fear. And among those faces was an unforgettable one, a man who emerged from the fog like a nightmare. Edward Teach was his name, but everyone knew him by a chilling moniker, Blackbeard. A long beard covered his face, from which burning wicks dangled, igniting terror before the fighting even began. He concealed pistols and guns under his coat and roared with his booming voice above the waves. It was as if thunder itself fought by his side. His fame wasn't in the number of ships he sank, but in the legend that preceded him, the legend of a man who neither compromises nor retreats. In 1721, Blackbeard led his ship, the Queen Anne's Revenge, and blockaded the trade routes on the Caribbean coasts. He knew when to attack, when to negotiate, and when to vanish into the fog. But the end came as he expected, bloody, in a fierce battle near the coasts of Carolina. He took more than 20 stab wounds and 5 gunshot wounds, but he didn't fall until his body was a shredded piece. And he wasn't alone. There was Bartholomew Roberts, the man who captured over 400 ships, wore a black feathered hat, and imposed iron laws on his crew. And there were Bonnie and Mary Red, 2 women who carried the sword against the world, lived outside every law, and raised the flag of death in a sky that recognized no regret. Yet, the Caribbean wasn't just a massacre, it was a dream, a place where legends were born and hearts danced between smoke and gold, then vanished. And from the Caribbean Sea and the echoes of battles, the winds calm and the sails were out. In the next chapter, we follow the pirates in their final steps, when the rebels grow old and the waves write the end of the story. At first, the sea seems eternal, and life aboard the ship as if outside time, only waves, swords, spoils, and glory that doesn't last long. But what happens when the cannons fall silent? When the hand that once pulled the rope trembles from rheumatism? And where does one who spent his life chasing sails go when he no longer has a sea or a ship? Many pirates didn't die in battle, but faded into the shadows, succumbing to slow diseases and constant hunger, lost in small ports that didn't know their names. Some tried to start a new life under an assumed name, farming, fixing boats, or working as a guard in a warehouse that bore no resemblance to the sea. But can a rebel suddenly transform into an ordinary citizen? Can one who lived by deceit and plunder pay his taxes and stand in line? Others remained in dark prisons, their bodies aging in rusty chains, awaiting a slow death without a dramatic scene or a farewell poem. And there were those whose end came with a small betrayal, a whisper in the dark from an old friend, a quiet handover to an authority that had been waiting for them for years. By the beginning of the 18th century, the world could no longer tolerate the chaos that pirates represented. The great powers allied began to legally pursue them, and closed ports to them. Naval forces were used not just for defense, but for revenge. Moreover, the era of organized trade arrived, and there was no longer a place on the sea for the chaotic knights. The world came to prefer contracts over guns, and ports over trenches. And so, the pirates vanished, like salt bubbles dissolving on the surface of the wave. But their story didn't die, it continued to be told at night and whispered by the wind in the ear of anyone who dreams of escaping a monotonous life. And so, when we turn off the light and recall what we heard tonight, we realize that the pirate world wasn't just an adventure nor just a black flag flying on a ship's mast. It was a complete life, a life on the margins, outside the laws, loud with rebellion, fragrant with the smell of gunpowder, and full of dreams that had no place on land. In those ships that swayed above the waves, fear coexisted with courage, loyalty with betrayal, and hope with madness. There was simple food, ragged clothes, and sleep under constant danger, yet they told stories, sang, and stole moments from a life that didn't belong to them. And in the conflicts that flared up between echoes, and the strange punishments applied without mercy, the truth is revealed: not everyone who carried a sword was a hero, nor did everyone who captured a ship achieve glory. Instead, many of them ended up nameless, leaving behind a few words in an old ledger or a skull forgotten by the sand on a deserted beach. Today, as we live in a world of laws and borders, some might be tempted to escape to a world like theirs. But remember that life with pirates wasn't a cruise on the waves, but a permanent battle against the world and against the self. And when their flame was extinguished, it wasn't only because they were defeated, but because the world itself had changed.